Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the expert panel session. And we will have a chance for question and answer later. So I'm just going to read the rules, what we're going to do here. Every panelist here is going to have a 5 minutes time to discuss the question that I've asked and they've agreed to answer. And then we have a 5 minutes for every panelist to intervene and add or comment or ask how the question. And at the end, we have 30 minutes or more, depending on how the session goes, for question and answer later. So I look forward to this great session. It's going to be an hour and a half. Please make sure that you have plenty of water with you. Wine is even better. And so that we can get started. So I'd like to welcome and thank you. Really, thank you, all of you, for taking time to be with us today. We have Sean Callnin. He's the executive principal with Ricca Design Studios. I know Tom Ricca, what a great man, great person, and alumni from University of Denver, great institution, and great to have you here. We have Barak. I love your segment. I always worked in luxury properties, not that the others are bad, but it's a great segment. It was I work for Intercontinental mostly, and I like that segment. We have Steve here, the guru of data. He's the only one in the world I know that has so much data that he doesn't know what to do with it. Thank you, Steve, for being with us. And then we have Anne. I have met Anne just, I think over LinkedIn. And Anne is a great, how do I have to put, I can't find the word, but she started something really great, a great association of women in tourism and hospitality. We need more than that. And she's doing really great. She's also the CEO of Sequel Hotels. And it's so great to have you here all the way from Canada. And then we have Chris. I really like to hear from Chris. We already had a little chat about destination management, where his customers come from to Vail. So there's a lot to learn. So we have a great mix of topics to discuss. And finally, we have Holly. I'm extremely interested to hear about the cruise industry, which has been decimated by this for many, many reasons. So having said that, welcome and thank you, and we will get started. So we start with Sean first, and you know the question, but I'll let you see this, let the audience see this because they haven't seen this. So Sean, how will your hotel and restaurant of the future look like in terms of design? So much has happened later with the pandemic, and I know you have to make some adjustment in terms of technology integration, human resource requirement, management expertise, and how to manage these properties in the future. Basically, what advice would you have for us that we can educate our future leaders to work with what you're going to do? Thank you. It's all yours, Sean.
Sure. Thanks, Angelo. And I guess thinking about the future, what does the future hold? Really, the answer is we don't know. It's unknown, and certainly nobody was expecting the pandemic and what it's done to the hospitality industry, hotel industry, and the food and beverage industry in particular has been very hard hit. So what does the future hold? We don't know. So we have to be nimble. We have to provide flexibility in design and in operations. Technology is going to be a huge part of that. And then flexibility in those aspects is going to help with our labor issues. Labor is always a challenge. And so what can we do to help that? And so we want to make sure we're providing that guest experience, and we want to make sure that our staff is safe. So when we think about design, how do we pivot quickly? Kitchens, bars, restaurants, dining rooms are typically not as flexible. In the hospitality industry, in the hotel industry in particular, that's an industry that doesn't like to change quickly and traditionally has not. There's certainly innovations for guest experience and efficiencies in operations, but over time, they haven't demonstrated to be able to pivot quickly. Restaurants, yes, absolutely, especially the smaller ones. They bring up the technologies, the ideas that everybody else adopts. So the restaurant industry is a lot more flexible. Even the big chains now are pivoting very quickly. They're applying new technologies. They're going to drive-in, pickup, drive-through. Even the big chains are doing this. So it can be done. In terms of design, we're food and beverage design firm, so I'm going to focus mostly on food and beverage. But in the hotels, we want to think about multi-purpose kitchens. If we're designing a new property, we can absolutely tackle that. Renovations, absolutely to some extent. But then front of house versus back of house. Front of house, what was a buffet area might want to convert to a dining room. So think about mobile equipment instead of fixed equipment. You can still do beautiful millwork in a dining space, in a restaurant, in a cafe, but make it mobile. Make it so that it can push out, be packed away in storage for the time being, and then that space converts to a dining space, spaced dining. Don't fix booths and banquettes. They can be portable as well. You could even put them on locking casters. Be able to convert that dining room to a different environment. Be prepared to serve in different places. That pool grill that is really serving currently the pool environment might actually become your main dining environment in a pandemic condition. So think ahead about what you're planning for that kitchen out there. Is there some storage space that could convert to allow that kitchen to expand to all of a sudden become your 3-meal restaurant? Other aspects, ghost kitchens. You've all probably heard the term virtual kitchens. Those are kitchens that are multi-purpose kitchens. Just doesn't apply to the restaurant industry, can apply to the hotel industry as well. Provide different concepts that come out of the same kitchen, that 3-meal kitchen or that banquet kitchen. Try to combine these kitchens as much as possible. Certainly always important for efficiency in operations, but even more so for now to be able to pivot and change your operations quickly. The more you can consolidate your food services, the more that you can convert that. We can specify mobile equipment in those kitchens, quick disconnects, drop cords. So we're changing workstations, turning things around. Now we're serving out the back door instead of the front door. Now we're serving more so up to the rooms. A lot of hotels, brands were switching away from room service and providing those beautiful lobby environments where we're bringing together the hotel lobby, the bar, the food and beverage. Well, you might have to pivot away from that in a pandemic environment. So be prepared for that, both front of house and back of house. Technology, probably the most important thing. The technology is out there to be nimble, to have handhelds, to have delivery, to order from your phone, order from everywhere. All these technologies are out there. You want to keep those platforms that give you the most flexibility to change. Keep it in-house, avoid third party if you can. Keeping it in-house allows you to change more quickly, gives you more channels of service, more real-time data as well. And 5G is going to change everything because that technology is out there. The biggest limitation is the connectivity. That's what's been really limiting the technology industry and the hospitality. 5G is going to change that and hopefully beyond. And all those things are going to allow you to be flexible with your labor and how you manage facilities, to be able to convert and pivot your positions. So somebody that is working out front, maybe a server in a dining room, is all of a sudden becoming somebody that's putting to-go meals together, or they're helping deliver the food out to the beach or that urban pool deck that is now your main dining room under a tent. So being able to help your labor convert to different positions quickly is important. Some brands are looking at hybrid retail models. So even high-end vending there's a silver lining to the pandemic, and that is it's forcing these technologies to accelerate, to advance more quickly. Even something like robotics, which was definitely coming. How it applies to the hospitality world remained to be seen, but now it's accelerating. Absolutely, there are a lot more restaurants, chains looking at it, and I imagine it's even going to get into the hotel market as well.
Very well, thank you, Sean. About the panelists, do you have any question, anything you want to add to Sean's presentation? this chat here. It appears that we don't have any question, anything to add. If we don't, then we'd like to move forward and to the next. Thank you very much, Sean. Great insight. Sure. And I know that technology is going to come to the classroom because we'll have to train and teach students how to use it. Just at the Altersham and the rationale oven, when they came out, we had to start teaching new things.
Well, fortunately for the equipment world, the technologies are there to support all of that change. That's been advancing for many years. The ventless technology and equipment, many more options for ventless. So the portability of equipment becomes much easier. And so that rooftop pool deck that converts to your main dining in a pandemic situation, much easier to take that equipment up there and convert that storage space to now a new kitchen. So as long as the space is there, the infrastructure is there, the equipment will support that change.
Let me ask one last question before I move over. What do you see in terms of wine lists and menus? Are they now totally digitized, or do we still have printed menus in your future planning, future restaurant planning?
Oh, that's definitely changing, using the QR codes for menus and having everything digital. Everybody is now getting used to looking on their phone ahead of time. All the ordering apps are there. And then being able to serve, touchless. Touchless is going to be huge in all these environments going forward, even well beyond the pandemic. So people are getting used to that now. Another silver lining of the pandemic is that it's forcing us to be much more virtual and technology driven.
One last question is, we see an increasing number of a third-party delivery provider. And is that having an effect on the way we build kitchens or, delivery sides? How do we do that? Like a window ice cream on the window?
It is. The third party, it's tough. There are pros and cons to that. The big chains are having more success with it. The contracts with the third party delivery, bigger contracts, more flexibility, more power to negotiate those costs. But for the small person out there, the small operator, very tough to afford that delivery. So having the technology to be flexible for pickup, for local delivery, to avoid that if you can. But I think that's going to keep evolving because the third party delivery, it's going to stay around. So hopefully that will plane out and be fair for everybody.
Sean, we have one last question here from the audience. I only see one from Chanel. She's asking, how do you think technology is going to affect the future of events?
Events, that is actually, I know we're going to talk about events here coming up. The events, to be able to stage differently in a building and to be able to control the flow in and out probably is the biggest aspect of that. The food and beverage side of that, to be able to order and have something delivered to you in an event is going to be very important as well. So probably a lot of those aspects I talked about for restaurants and hotels could apply to events as well.
Again, these are great points to bring in our classroom. This is very important. Okay, I see one more. Can we fit one more question here? How do you think technology is going to affect the, oh, sorry, I just did that. I just, here's in the chat. This comes from Sejan. What do you see your senior customers who are in their 60s and older? How do they use technology? Are they having a hard time using it?
Well, that's a really good question, and probably that is the case. However, I believe starting with those QR codes, going to restaurants if they're forcing themselves to get out and about in a safe environment, using those QR codes, it's going to start that. I know my parents and my wife's parents are same in the same case, but they are perfect examples of folks that are learning to use technology more and more.
Very well. Any other question for Sean? If not, we will move over to Barak. And I will ask the question. Barak, you have the question in writing already, but I'll read this for the audience. They can listen to that. So Barak, The luxury segment is highly dependent on innovation, exclusivity, prestige, mystique, to attract uniquely demanding customer demographics. I mean, those who can afford it, which is continuously looking for something they've not experienced before. What trends do you foresee in the luxury segment over the next decade? Moreover, what other factors will influence the segment in the future? I see a lot coming out of the Middle East, if I can give you a hint, like in Dubai, you know, in new technologies and luxury properties being opened there. You can take from here. We can switch screen to Barak now. Ray?
Am I good? Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So let me start with the technology. I think we're just to follow on from the last bit of it. So what are luxury travelers going to be looking for in the future? What are the big trends? So we just talked about technology, and we talked about how grandparents might have some challenges with technology and how we're going to adapt it and this. But what I think what we found in luxury travel is the luxury travel industry has certainly become very segmented over the last few years, as everyone wants different things, and there's a lot more different types of styles of hotels and what they deliver. But they all have one thing in common, and that is that every guest, for them, their definition of luxury might look different to each other, but where they're in common is their time, right? Time for them is a luxury for everybody. And these days, time has become a lot more limited for people. They're doing shorter trips. They're combining them with business. And obviously, a lot of this we're speaking pre-COVID, but that will come back. And so what this means is that what we like to say, whether your focus is on design or history or location, the key, every decision that you make with regards to technology in your property needs to account for, is this a good use? Is this giving the guest more time to do what they want, or is it taking away time? So for instance, using technology for check-ins. So, contactless is actually very popular by guests. Why? Because it gives them more time. Contactless check-in gives them more time to spend doing things in the hotel that they enjoy, like visiting the spa or eating in the restaurant or lying at the pool, visiting the beach. Those are things that people want to do in your hotel. They don't want to stand in line to check in. It goes the same thing with payments, for instance. So for instance, if I have to break out a credit card and spend time filling out a bill and pay for that bill while I'm in the hotel, whereas if I can do this seamlessly with technology where maybe my card's already registered and I just have to swipe something, or there's a recognition, the sensor that knows that I am who I am and I don't have to pay, much like, I'll use Disney as an example, their magic bands. Those types of technologies where it creates more time to do what I want to do within the hotel. That is positive technology. There's so much technology out there. There's so much new technology coming, especially in luxury, where a lot of the experimentation happens, because luxury hotels can be a little bit more, they can spend a little bit more on trying out new technologies. That my recommendation, or our recommendation to the hotels, is just think of it from the perspective, is this saving time, or is this a good use? Is this creating time for the guests to spend doing what they want to do, or is it taking away from it? If it's adding time to what they want to do, it's a good use of technology. If it's taking it away, it's a bad use of technology. And that's what we feel is our sort of recommendation when it comes to technology and luxury. Some of the other trends that are out there, I think what's very important for travelers today is that they want to leave, and we're talking about luxury travelers, there's more of a sense that they want to leave their vacation feeling that they've had a positive impact on their health, physically and mentally, and on the location that they went to. So what is my trip doing to the place that I'm visiting? Did I leave the place in a better condition than it was when I came there? And that's something that maybe we didn't think about a few years ago. And it's very, very important, especially in the higher net worth. There are a number of different travel companies that are starting where percentages of the money that they take for travel goes directly to the areas that the people visit. And so luxury hotels are starting to, they realize that they have they have to create opportunity for the guests that come to visit there to be able to have some positive impact. So you're seeing hotels partner with local charities and also just allowing so for instance, in the Caribbean, you will see a number of the properties are allowing visitors to go and actually visit labs where they're regrowing some of the reefs that have been damaged by tourism. And allowing them to even, donate some money or get involved in these types of places. So they want to go beyond just visiting a place. They want to actually get involved with the community. And they also want to be able to, leave on a positive impact. And then the second thing, as I mentioned, is their health and wellness. So whatever you do in the properties, you need to start thinking about how to create a healthy experience for the people that stay there. Wellness is becoming very, very important. So this goes beyond just having a gym in the corner. It's, we're seeing hotels partner with major fitness brands. They're having guest yoga instructors coming. They're looking at how they can they're creating indoor and outdoor gyms so people can work inside and outside, running maps, running groups. I know of hotels now where the general manager takes their guests that run every morning for a run. And then obviously food plays a big part of this. Looking at things like, does your room service menu still serve mostly junk food at 11 o'clock at night? People come in from a trip, they want to eat something healthy. So it's important that while the people are there, that they leave and they feel like they've had a positive impact on themselves and on the place that they visited at. And I'll say another large trend that we're seeing is programming. So as many people have, over the years with technology, people have started to take more of a role in planning some of their trips. And with that, there's this missing piece where they get there and they don't really know what to do. And I think the hotels, especially in luxury, have become the gateway to the community. And so they want guidance and programming. They want things to happen within luxury at the property that will introduce them to the community and also, just entertain them while they're there. And so you're seeing a lot of things, it's not just, come to the hotel and this is our bar and this is our restaurant. You need to have programming going on. You need to have events going on. There should be, some of the top luxury properties now offer tours right through the hotel, and a number of different programs and things going on. So I think programming is a big trend that you will see in the luxury segments as well. And then the last, I think it's worth pointing out that with COVID, what we've seen is that the health, how people travel, hotels are going to have to play a part in making it easy for people to be able to get COVID tests, for instance, or to be part of a program where lab results can be sent and things like that. So we're actually looking at starting to partner with some of the same groups that the airlines are partnering with to allow hotels to offer rapid testing at their hotels and things like this so that they can get home easier. Because we all say, okay, well, what happens after COVID? Well, I think COVID should be a lesson to us. As soon as things hopefully return to normal, we also want to see that this technology is there so that the next time something happens, we don't have to go through this process again. We have the technology. And so what we're seeing behind the scenes are very big players in travel and technology and health starting to come together so that, for instance, a guest can stay in a hotel, have a rapid test done in their hotel so that they can go home. The results go straight to into the app to the airline, and it's all seamless so that when they get to the airport, that the whole process happens. I'm traveling overseas next week, and my entire process, everything is being done through an app through the airline, and we're now trying to get that integrated into the hotels as well. So that is something that I think will be a big trend in luxury.
Thank you, Barak.
Travel.
Thank you. For the panelists, do you have any question, anything you want to add to Barak's presentation?
The last point was very interesting. I'm wondering if you'd be bold enough to say which airline is, or what app that is that's being trialed.
Actually, if you follow the International Luxury Hotel Association, our website's the ilha.com. We're literally at the final stage. We're moving ahead with it, and we'll be announcing it probably in the next week or two. It is one of the major. It's not just one airline. It's actually an airline group. One of the airline groups. I can't say who it is just yet because we're signing it off. But what they're doing, just to give you an idea, is there's a company that specializes in technology for medical results, right? So when you go to the doctor, your lab results get sent automatically to your doctor. That same company is partnered with one of the largest global clinic management companies. So for instance, if you're overseas on travel insurance and you need to go to a clinic, it's all, they have recommendations. So they're partnering with the airlines, and then they've built an app, which is, it's working as well with the credit agencies, so that we can ensure, what they're trying to do is ensure that the person that's using the app is the person that they say they are, that the test results are what they say they are, and that it happens very quickly anywhere in the world. So what will happen is, when we announce this in about a week, hopefully, you'll be able to, any hotel in the world will be able to go through one of the clinics there and be able to have arrangements for that clinic to come to their hotel, sometimes on a daily basis, to be able to test guests, have their results go straight back, and the airlines will have them. The airlines are encouraging this as well, because they would like the testing to take place at the hotels, so that the guests don't have to come to the airports.
Exciting. Thank you.
Any other panelists want to say something? Okay, so we have a, okay. We had allocated 5 minutes to the panelists to respond to any panelist presentation. I'm having questions here, so I took the like a management decision earlier to let the question be asked right after. So since we have time, if no one has anything to say, I will take those questions and deal with them instead of waiting for the end. Well, let's do that. So I had here question. I'm going to ask this in the order they were received, so you can be very brief, Khan. So David is asking, Barak, the Q code menus are not luxury in his opinion. How a high-end property is handling what a high-end service means to the customer. And if they do not understand it, they will not have customer loyalty.
Are you saying QR codes menus are not considered luxury?
That's what he's saying, yes.
That's what he's saying, okay. So what I believe is that, and I'll go back to my first one, I believe that it's all about time. I think that luxury is time. So if somebody finds, you know, for me, being given a menu, especially like, let's talk about today, where, you know, a menu may have been, you're not even sure how clean, you know, how hygienic it is to receive a menu. I feel like QR codes are something that might take you a little more time to figure out, but once people have figured them out, or even just digital menus, or but I think that the future is really about time and the location. So if you're in a location and the QR code doesn't suit that, that's fine. But I think that in another environment, it doesn't matter if it's a luxury. I've sat at, honestly, what I think is some of the best hotels in Miami, for instance, and they have digital menus, they have QR codes, and it works perfectly, and it feels great because it's fast and it's efficient and it goes straight to the kitchen. So to say it's not luxury, I feel like it depends on the environment that you're in. But if it saves time and it works well, I do feel that it can be very much so luxury.
Thank you, Barak. I just received a notice from the technical department to move to the next panelist. We'll answer the question later. So, and then you will address that question later. Thank you. Steve, you're next. I'm going to ask a short question, and then, you know, you're pretty much free to talk. Because data, mega data, what big data, whatever it is just big, right? Please tell us, the audience, especially the students who are ABDs and those who are presented here for the first time, okay? what can they do with what you do, what you have?
Yeah, no, good question. As far as students are concerned, and I'll spend more time at this, in the next session. That we make data. We have a program called the Share Center that essentially makes data available to universities around the world for research, for student projects, and for use in the classroom. We launched this program in 2011. We work with nearly 1,000 universities in 80 different countries. And we, our primary goal is to make data available to professors, to students, and then we have analytic related resources like student certifications and competitions and virtual internships, things like that. I'll share a little bit more about that, but that's basically our effort to try to give back to academia.
Thank you. Anything else you want to add to enhance even a previous presentations, what you do?
Yeah, no, I mean, basically, the kind of things that people are, that we've been talking about are exactly what we're seeing. Angelo, do you want me to jump into challenges and opportunities, or?
Well, because we have an extended session for you later, I thought just to cover something, if you want to interact with the other panelists is good. If not, I can move to the next panelist and then we'll dedicate more time to those questions in the next session.
Yeah, real quick, and I'll just briefly cover challenges and opportunities, and because we've seen a huge amount of both. And for challenges, the challenges we're seeing, it's not really, we understand hotels are having challenges in the COVID situation, but for challenges from a data point of view are also something we face, because I was looking at some recent presentations, and I noticed a number of the slides in there are slides that we never used to use. With the number of closed hotels we have, we had to adopt a different methodology based on total room inventory for percent changes. Think about the challenge for percent changes during 2020. Hotels like Barak's members have had -70. What's the real difference between -70, -60, and -50? The typical GM is not programmed to be able to distinguish between those types of things. So we've had to, and then getting into 2021, think about the challenge for percent changes then, because then they'll be positive and nobody will really know what that means. So we're looking at methodologies where we're indexing back to 2019 to see how far are we back to pre-COVID levels, things like that. Correlations. I mean, we're correlating data to cases, to TSA checkpoint counts, and to vaccines, things that we would have never conceived of prior to this, and then the other, and then as far as opportunities are concerned, real quick, for opportunities, and this is really applicable for both industry and academic researchers. It's just, data analysis at this point in time has become more important than it ever has. I've created a presentation that I'll make available to academics. It's called Bright Spots in the Storm. And basically what I do is I look at 40 different bright spots. Now, a bright spot could be a sign of recovery. It could be a group of hotels that are doing better than other hotels. We were talking before about Vail and outdoor tourism is very popular. There are resort destinations. There are luxury hotels that are members of Barak's association that are doing, they're doing really well right now. And but it's different situations. When I talk to kids outside the country, it's not Miami Beach, it's Myrtle Beach, and it's not Orlando, it's Gatlinburg. Hotels like Blackberry Farms, outdoor tourism, at a totally different situation. And then you go outside the country and you look at places like Sanya. Sanya beat last year's numbers. Their RevPAR percent change was positive 6.4 for 2020. The Maldives, you look at just last month, up you know, 80, 90% occupancy last month when international flights got turned back on. So there's a lot of things to analyze. There's a lot of exceptions. There's a lot of misconceptions. A lot of people think every hotel is doing awful, and that's not the case. But it's, you know, for an academic researcher, the opportunities are limitless. For an industry person, it's really time to drill down, to understand the data, comparing, you know, areas to different areas. Everybody's looking at China right now, trying to find signs of recovery and lessons to learn. You know, comparing it to comparing performance metrics right now to prior years, just as important. So didn't mean to take up too much time there, but just some thoughts, and I'll elaborate a little bit more. Thank you. I gave a chance to go through an industry update after this session, and I'll be glad to go into a little more detail and make that presentation available to anybody who wants it, including the bright spots. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Steve. I like the word correlation. I think that explains it all. We are no longer living in a vacuum. I don't think we ever did, but that word really means a lot to us, the researchers. Okay, having said that, is any panelist who wants to ask Steve a question? If not, we can reserve that for the other session for him, and we can dedicate more time.
I have a question, Angelo. Hi, Stephen. Ex-GM, CEO, lover of Star here in Canada. Are you participating on any best practice sharing with the drill down of this data in a global fashion in terms of recovery?
I mean, obviously we're doing presentations all over the world. In terms of the methodological differences, those are the ones we're working out with our customers. You know, the TRI, for example, total room inventory. That's something we, you know, when we first realized, hey, this is not going to work anymore. The TRI is, you know, think about it. If you're calculating occupancy, you calculate it based upon the number of hotels that are open. But when 90% of the hotels in Spain close, that doesn't work. So TRI, basically, total room inventory, basically went back to the number of hotels that were open at the end of 2019, and it's a totally different metric. So that kind of thing, we're sitting down with our, you know, corporate customers and explaining, you know, running that by them, helping them understand. Same with the 2019 type methodologies and the percent change issues. So, you know, we never do stuff in a vacuum. We try to work real closely with all the companies that we're involved with, and make sure we get consensus. And you know, it's a two-way street. Make sure we're giving them what they need to make good strategic decisions as far as the future is concerned. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any other question for Steve? And again, Steve is going to come back later with more details about STR.
But yeah, just a lot of opportunities. Gosh, I was making some notes, but you think about weekend getaways at luxury hotels, you know, totally has gained respect. Holiday travel, staycations, you know, things that were just sort of buzzwords before have now become, high on the radar especially for luxury hotels, but for all hotels. So all kinds of opportunities. Sorry to get excited about them.
Very well. All right. With that said, we'll move over to Anne. And Anne, I will read the question so the audience can read that. So I have my teleprompter here. All right. So Anne, today we cannot tune on a TV channel or visit a website without reading about women in business and women leadership. And you know that I personally follow you on LinkedIn. You have many, and there's this great site called Women Lead, something like this. You're a big part of that. So I read that, I follow that a lot. So these have been very positive developments for our industry, which historically has had an overwhelmingly male management dominance, as we know. So what is the status quo of women in hospitality and tourism? What does the future look like in terms of upward mobility for women in general? you know that this is crucial. It's just not good to start a career, but we also want to move upward, and that opportunity needs to be there. So what are the challenges and opportunities Melee ahead that you see? It's all yours. Take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Angelo. Well, first of all, it's delightful to be here from Canada, so thank you for inviting me. And you've beaten the odds on statistics, because usually we have 1 to 6 at the podium speaking. So you've got 2 women here present today, so congratulations.
Thank you.
In terms of status quo, I mean, we now know statistically from reports out of various gathering of data that actually diversity, and I'll encompass diversity being women, people of color, diverse backgrounds, and disabilities, actually is good for business. It increases profitability up to 6% higher profit. So the status quo is that we now know that it's out in the open. We now have a female, a vice president in America, and yesterday she convened a meeting saying that there is a national emergency, that women are being forced out of the workforce because of the pandemic. And when we have women at the table, then we can raise the issues and we can move the needle. In terms of the status quo, on with org's website, we have published some of the Castell out of Atlanta reports on diversity and women of color. We also participate in using data from the STARS, so I'd definitely like to take advantage of any reports mentioned or the bright spots. What we see from the data collected in terms of status quo is that 7 women were promoted to CEO in 2018-19, which is a very small number, but one of them was actually a Canadian, Heather McCrory at Accor, who's the CEO for North and South America. There's a 20% increase in the number that have been promoted, but it's still a very small number. Women are holding strong at 12%, I'm being facetious, of hospitality leadership roles. Less than 2% are women of color. The STAR data from investment conferences in Canada and the US indicates that 21% of attendees are female. And we know from other data that less than 2% of women have access to capital, which is a barrier to owning hotels and restaurants and cruise lines and everything else. So in terms of the future, advancing women to the podium is a good start. That's very important. Tying compensation and performance reviews to advancing women, Marriott does that, moving them up the ladder. Board of directors, currently in North America, major Fortune 500 companies, women comprise 23% of board seats, less than 1% are women of color. So advancing women's, promoting, sponsoring, if you have children, talking to your daughters about it, really making sure that we endorse those that want to advance, that they don't get stuck in that last rung on the ladder. In terms of the future, I think you talked about innovation earlier. I'm on an advisory for an app called Headversity. I think resiliency tools and mental health in the hands of people right now are going to be really important. I'm on another advisory, lots of hotel advisories, but these 2 I'm particularly interested in solutions. And this is Lightbot Pulse Xenon, which is robotic to ensure that your guest meeting room or your cruise ship or your guest room, we're even cleaning grapes with this technology. So I think there's a lot of ways at 99.9% to rid pathogens, be it viral or bacterial. And I think as we welcome back people, they're going to want to feel safe in those environments, particularly in the group meeting environment. And lastly, in terms of the challenges and opportunities, I think there's a tremendous opportunity here. So many people have been furloughed. I think it's great because you can hire back women and people that are autistic who love data, and people that are Black and people that are Chinese. So there's a wonderful opportunity to reshape our industry and ensure that we have diversity and higher profitability working hand in hand. In terms of other opportunities, I mean, join WithOrg, follow me on LinkedIn. You know, I didn't do this because it was a business. I did it because for a long time, I was the only woman in the room at the investment conferences in New York and Toronto. And I just said to my friend Katie Taylor at Four Seasons at the time, who's now chair of Royal Bank, why are there so few women? We have to help them. So that's how WithOrg started. You can hire more women. Think about it. Each time you hire someone, could you hire a woman, please? You can ensure you pay them equal. That's easy. Take your payroll home, even if it's $100 million payroll. That's what Starbucks did. You can encourage more men to champion women and girls. You can realize there is a broken rung at the top of the ladder. And finally, hotel magazines. I love hotel magazines. I read it cover to cover like we all do. They did a people version each year. They do 6 people to watch. I was absolutely honored to be one of them. But why was there only one? It was, you know, so we have to question, because if we're going to model behavior and tell our stories, you know, why are these statistics and how do we move the needle? Because what I would say, ladies and gentlemen, is the needle isn't moving quick enough, but we are now out in the open. So in closing, I welcome you to join WithOrg and get involved and realize that the needle will move when men help us champion causes so that our daughters and our children earn equal wage.
Very well, thank you, and very well put. And I'm guessing that what you just stated can be really generalized. This is not one segment or the other, right? You really talk about the entire industry.
I'm talking about restaurants, hotels, cruise, car rental.
Everywhere, everywhere. Thank you. You had great statistics there. You were really good. I never heard those numbers before, so it's really great. Right? Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Anyone wants to end the presentation? Interact with Steve?
Yeah, I know we have a lot of academics on there, and I just wanted to emphasize an important point she made. And we have academic, you know, there are professors out there that are doing research on gender diversity and coming up with great results. And did you see the research that Sawan Kim did?
No.
From Lausanne? Oh, this is great. This is a perfect example. This is a professor in Switzerland, respected professor in Switzerland, and she did a simple survey. She surveyed all the hotels in Switzerland, she asked them a bunch of questions, but there were 2 critical questions. First was, how many senior leadership positions do you have in your hotel? And then you can guess the second question, how many are filled by women? She took that data from her survey and then correlated it with STR performance data, and guess what you found? If the hotel had all women in leadership, down here. If they had all men in leadership, down here as well. And guess which ones had the best performance? Diversity. When that was Angelo, you were talking about correlation, perfect correlation, and that was a grand slam. So there are professors out there that are looking at this issue from a research point of view, and that was just in Switzerland. Think about the opportunities and the way to grow on that. If anybody wants to an introduction to her, please let me know. But it was, it was a ground.
I'd love an introduction, and Steve, I think I'll be in touch after this because I think there's more ways we can work together.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. I did not know about that data. That's really great. All right, so we have we have a lot of time because some of you have taken a little less time than I had allocated. So we'll have a lot of time for question and answer at the end, and we all have. I'm reading the chats here in the chat room. There's a lot of questions that we'll have to ask. Thank you again, Anne. Great to have you here. Next, we go to Chris. And Chris, I will read you the question for the audience as well. And Chris, I'm particularly interested in your session because I don't know if we split, if hospitality depends on tourism, if tourism depends on hospitality. I have never been able really to break it down in a sense. So you're an expert in destination management, destination marketing based in Vail. So I'm going to ask you this question, Chris. Destination management and destination marketing have become an integral part of the hospitality and tourism program curriculums, especially in our industry, in teaching. In striving to prepare students for tourism destination and management, educators rely on the practitioners like you to identify the need tourist management companies and hospitality operations, especially now that we live in a virtual world. Okay? I asked you earlier, what customers do you have and how do they get there, right? Where they come from? So what can we learn from you about the nature of a destination and marketing management, and how can we best prepare students for jobs that, especially in your field, have yet to be created?
Yeah, it's a fundamental challenge and question of our time, I think, in many ways. And I would love to defer my time back to Anne because I appreciated so much of what she had to say, and I think it's so important. Specific to your question with regards to the nature of destination and marketing management and how we can prepare students for jobs, I think it's twofold. I think when we look at this industry, this destination marketing, 12 or 15 years ago, it was destination marketing. How do we build our brand? How do we segment our audience? How do we collaborate with the public and private sectors to promote our areas and bring people in? And that was the focus. It started to evolve to the destination management, where DMOs, destination marketing organizations, started to shift their thinking to become destination management organizations. And how do we take a more holistic view of our role in developing our tourism assets, in taking ownership of things like wayfinding, and really looking at it from the visitor standpoint and the tourist standpoint. An example here in the Colorado area, in Eagle County, where we are in Vail, our towns and county came together to develop a trail management process. They fund park rangers and national forest rangers to come to alleviate and educate our visitors on our trail system. Our trails were being overwhelmed, and it caused disruption in residential neighborhoods and overcrowding and trash. So how do we educate them? The towns and the county came together to fund having more rangers in the area. That's a good example, I think, of destination management, and where a lot of communities, most communities, have moved from just marketing and bringing people in towards the management of how do we better own the guest experience, and how do we better manage the guest experience to develop our assets. I think the next trend, and we're starting to see it now, is how do we take that marketing aspect, and how do we take that management aspect, and how do we develop our destinations? How do we become destination development organizations where we're working on everything from tourism as economic development? How are we managing our resident sentiment towards tourism? How do our residents feel about our visitors? And how do we ensure that these things are aligned and that they are complementary? And it's not, I'm a local and you're a visitor and we no longer, we butt heads. That's not conducive to the guest experience. So managing that resident sentiment and making our residents our biggest ambassadors to welcome visitors in. That goes to things like employee training. It's something that probably 15 years ago, most destination marketing organizations were not necessarily taking a very proactive role in training we would train our own employees, but we weren't training the community at large, right? So hotels and activity providers, they would train their own folks on customer training, but they weren't training the community on guest service. Things like air service development. How are our DMO organizations taking an active role to attract and retain air service into our communities? How are we taking an active role in transit and transportation? Boulder, Colorado is a great case study. Boulder, a couple of years ago, they were having challenges with crowding at limited parking in residential neighborhoods for some of their trailheads. So they developed and put some of their tourism funding towards shuttle service from the downtown areas where parking was abundant. So you have the parking there. You didn't have the parking at places people needed it. So they put their tourism funding to develop a transit system. I think that's a great example of this idea of destination development and taking a more active role. The idea of destination marketing, positioning a location as a brand, that's not going to go away. That's so important to what we do as destination marketing organizations, is positioning our brand. But we also have to embrace the role of sustainability and managing our destination over time, with the idea that the guest experience is dependent upon the economic, social, and environmental sustainability of our communities. If any one of those three things falls to the wayside, and we're not taking care of our social aspects and the impacts of tourism, the environmental impacts of tourism, and the economic impacts of tourism, all focused around the guest experience, I think that's where we run the risk of falling short. And that, to answer your question specifically on how do students best prepare for jobs that might not exist yet, I think that that experiential nature is what we need to focus on. How do we train students for jobs that may or may not exist? We need to train students to focus on the experience and to develop critical thinking skills. A lot of what was talked about earlier with some of the previous presenters, flexibility, technology, beyond visitation and more to the experience, critical thinking skills, a collaborative focus. My goodness, if we don't focus on public sector, private sector, resident, visitor, and how do we collaborate, and how do we as DMO organizations be the collaborator and the convener? If we're the only groups really that can bring all these different entities to the table to focus on the outcome. And I think the last thing I would suggest for students is that you need to avoid developing a playbook, right? You can't have a playbook and say what works in Vail, Colorado can easily be applied to Barcelona, Spain, can easily be applied to Savannah, Georgia. You need to have the focus on that destination development, what a community needs are, what the visitor needs are, and be flexible in how you adapt that. Because I think that the days of I have my playbook and I'm going to adapt it into a destination and force that in, those days are gone. It won't be successful bridging all those things that we need to do. So critical thinking skills to focus on destination development and collaboration, I think it really is the focus areas, and where students need to really think about what those jobs look like.
Thank you. Great. I really appreciate it. It was a very nice, you touched on several points that I'd asked very well. Anybody wants to add anything? Chris? No? All right. Having said that, we move to Holly. And Holly, before I ask you the question, I have a couple of statements to make. Number one is, in Italy, we learn Latin. I don't know if they still do that, but I've learned the phrase dulcis in fundo, which means sweet at the end. I find that the cruise line industry is under-researched. Anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. So I really care because similar to marina, golf courses, you know, I'm the editor of a new journal and I don't see anything. We always talk about tourism, but there are certain areas that really we don't talk about. And so I'm so happy to have you here, and hopefully we can inspire students, ABDs, and then to get into research like that because it's so big. And I also have to add something that I consulted with Steve before I asked you this question. And unfortunately, I hope he doesn't mind me saying that, Steve does not track data from cruise liners. He said he tried, but maybe I can inspire him to approach the industry again. We needed data, Steve. It's a floating hotel. It's crucial to our industry. So maybe one day we'll have that. Right? And so if we can switch screen and go to Holly, and I will ask you the question. So thank you, Chris. If you can close your screen sharing. All right. Is it working?
My computer froze for a little bit, so I apologize. Okay. I had a little misconnection there, but I believe I'm fixed. I believe.
Okay. Yes, you're fine. All right. So Holly, welcome. And I'd like to ask you this question. The cruise line industry has suffered tremendous losses during the COVID-19 pandemic. So what have we learned in your experience? And next is, what can we do in the future to protect this critical segment of the hospitality, which again, according to me, is under research, together with travel and tourism industries? What should we incorporate in our curriculum to prepare students to deal with these unprecedented and catastrophic emergencies?
So let me start with your first question. I'm going to do a flashback to when this whole COVID situation started. The media was highly focusing on the cruise industry, specifically in Japan, and then just a little bit later in Italy with the ships docked there. And at the time, a lot of the cruise industry executives are now reflecting back and saying, we lost the opportunity at the time to demonstrate exactly what was going on. What are the cleaning standards on board, ongoing, not just in a COVID crisis or in a GI outbreak on board? What is that ongoing way of the cruise industry handling situations? We missed the opportunity of being engaged and being involved in the misinformed media and their dialogue, and not kind of guiding their understanding of what was actually happening. I think it was such a shock, and the world was just tuned in, that the cruise industry took the stance to just be quiet, because gosh, if we speak up and say the wrong thing, then that puts us in another fire. And now the cruise industry executives are saying, you know, we really missed that opportunity to be able to say, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and this is what was actually happening. So one of the things, I'll give you a quick example. GI is a common outbreak. And when we say an outbreak, it means if you have 2% of a population on a ship, okay, of 1,000 passengers, 20 passengers is considered an outbreak. And those people are isolated, okay? And we immediately have to report that to local health authorities as well as the CDC. And protocols are put into place, okay? A lot of cruise ships, I will say, rarely go beyond 2 or 3 people on board a ship that would have that. But the same protocols are put into place. They're put into quarantine. So in case of this COVID outbreak, which we didn't know much about, the ship was in Japan. They didn't know what they were facing because they were treating it as a GI protocol, and then immediately switched to ask the health authorities. They said, this is not GI, this is something different. And this is what we're experiencing. And they completely tented those people into complete quarantine, and were waiting for guidance. And that's exactly how they handled it. In the meantime, the ports were nervous because they were hearing from the media of what it could or could not be. And they shut down the ship and said, nobody's allowed to come ashore. So, and it just spiraled from there. So again, maintaining that quick media is important. And I really appreciated, I believe it was Barak who made the comment, you know, today it's COVID, what's it going to be next time? And we're learning a lot in terms of how to deal with a situation. We learned a lot with how to deal with GI in the cruise industry, and we've conquered that. COVID took us to an Olympic level for certain. So it's just, it's being on top of that narrative and knowing how to speak with your fellow colleagues at your fellow competitor lines, you know, to come together and say, this is how we're handling it. This is what we're dealing with. This is who we're working with. We're working with the CDC. We're working with the WHO. This is how we're coming into grasp of how we handle situations. As far as classes and what have you, I am a graduate and an alum of UNLV's hotel program, and knowing the audience of professors, I wanted to share kind of a fun little story in that I had a professor, and I'll name him. It was Skip Swerdlow. I don't know if he's still around or not, but at the time he taught a course where the opening day of class was he put us into teams of 4 and we became hotel owners. We all had the same type of hotel in the class. He described what the hotel was, and he described how many restaurants we all had, et cetera. So we were all dealing with the same dynamic. And every day he would come in with a different challenge. He would say, food wasn't delivered today. How are you going to keep your profits? And so as students, we were like, oh my gosh, you know, that doesn't happen. You know, of course we have a supply chain. And then he would say things like, high winds are developing and the media is reporting that it might be a hurricane within the next couple of days. How are you going to handle that? Well, kids from the East Coast immediately started filling their hotel bathtubs with water. They started barricading the outside windows to protect the glass. The West Coast students didn't fare that well because we don't face hurricanes. And so bit by bit, different things would happen to these hotels, and we constantly had to get past it. And we thought he was nuts. We said, you know, no hotel will ever face all of these challenges all at once. And then he came in the next day and he said 25% of your rooms have been burned. You had a hotel fire. And we thought, are you nuts? You're crazy doing this. But we had fun. We were going through all these lessons, etc. Fast forward, I'm a GM on board a cruise ship. We're traveling through hurricanes. We're traveling through areas where we have to change ports. So a guest may have paid to see St. Thomas, but for whatever reason, we can't get into St. Thomas that day. Or a guest may have paid to see the Turkish port of Istanbul, but guess what? Because of civil unrest, we're not going there. So any number of challenges that are constantly taught, this class became a flashback to me. And I remember thinking, yeah, I somehow in me, I know that we can deal with this and we can handle this. And I can't encourage professors enough to do classes like that really challenge, you know, their thinking. And to Chris's word of critical thinking, you know, thinking outside that box, thinking beyond, okay? What we're seeing is not necessarily what is truth. So apply those critical thinking skills. That's very, very important. And now on the hotel side, the resort side, I can tell you, because I know what cruise ship employees have gone through, I may lean towards hiring them before I will hire a land-based employee because of the training that they have to go through. So applying on land, you apply to a Marriott, an Intercon, a Hilton, a Ritz-Carlton. You fill out an application, you go through an interview process, and you're hired, okay? Before a cruise line can even look at you, you have to have what they call Stcw Credentials. It stands for Standards of Training and Certification Watchkeeping. Every single crew member, we don't care what role you are in, deck, engine, or hotel, has to go through survival training, not only fire prevention, but firefighting. You will don fire gear and fight fires. You will go through first aid. You'll go through personal safety and social responsibility. You'll go through security awareness and homeland security measures and counterterrorism techniques. You'll go through crowd and crisis management, which is huge, because in any situation where you may have to line up your guests at a boat station because maybe a fire crew needs to get into a certain part of the cabins and they want the guests out of the way, so they'll call a general fireboat drill. you'll find guests are nervous. And some of guests react differently. The psychology of that, how they're going to react, that's taught. And also, again, the safety training at a different level, and that how to use guests that are in panic to your advantage. You're taught so many different skill sets that have far exceeded some of the training that I've seen in resorts. Resorts have certain employees that are trained for certain things. Example of fire. If a fire breaks out in a hotel, all the hotels or all of the employees are told to evacuate, just go. There's a certain number of employees that stand back and fight the fire until the fire department comes. On board a cruise ship, every single employee is taught to fight that fire and how to do it. It makes you very, very effective. So when I meet with students, the universities call me sometimes and they say, hey, we have a student that's like you that knew they wanted to be in the cruise industry. Can you talk to them about some of the differences? And that's one of the first things I talk about is STCW certificates are valid for 5 years. So if you know next year you're going to be graduating and you want to go into the cruise industry, you might start pursuing those certifications so that you are travel ready. Because when the cruise industry hires somebody and they need somebody quick and fast, they want somebody experienced in their role. This is not a place to learn your trade. And they want somebody who is travel ready, meaning you have your certifications ready to go. And you may be called with 3 days notice. Like, we need you in Athens, Greece, day after tomorrow to join the ship. And you have to be ready to go. So make sure, you know, all of your physicals are ready, all of your, you know, details are in place. And that's very, very different from working in the cruise industry. Working in the resort industry, excuse me. So those are things that I would encourage professors to make students aware of. It's a little bit more than a standard resort, land-based resort. There's a lot more training that takes place, and students can get ahead of the curve by signing up for STCW courses.
Thank you, Holly. I would like to dedicate some time to question and answer. Thank you for your contribution. And I really hope that we can contact you and you can put us in touch to do some research about the cruise line segment. There's really not much there. And together with golf courses and mariners, there's absolutely no research about that. And you are so vital, those 3 segments, but especially the cruise line, I call them the floating hotels. Together with Steve, I hope we can get started with generating some data. And maybe you can put that together, and you know, we'll see again at the next conference, maybe with a special interest group about that. Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I have a set of questions that have been asked here. Some questions are long, so I have already synthesized them in my mind. Okay, if you can give me the screen, Ray, can you give me the screen? Right. All right. He's going to try to give me the screen so you can see me. All right. And so I'm going to ask the questions. I think the first 3 go for Barak. If you can please just keep them short. I will ask them short, just say sometimes just a yes or no. I will do that. Thank you. All right. So the first question comes from, let me get back to you. I will ask them in the order they were received. It's actually from an anonymous attendee. He's asking, what's going to be the alternative for buffet service in large hotels like luxury ones? Please be very short.
So what is the alternative to, I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Sorry, this was for Barak.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
No problem. Well, buffet, I'm sure the cruise industry could answer that one too. They have the same issue. Yeah, I think there's a lot of options. I think that we talked about going back to traditional dining. I think that small plates are things that people can do. I mean, to be honest, I think that buffets were in luxury were always something that were kind of, you know, okay. And so I think for most luxury properties, I think that it's easy for them to adapt to not having to do buffets, speaking specifically to luxury. But I think you'll see the industry adapt. You'll see like little, I would expect you'll see more and more like individual type of containers where people are picking up things that are, you know, maybe covered, and and that, but you know, more traditional dining and just ordering and having food delivered. And grab and go is a huge thing as well now. We talked about ghost kitchens and people being able to order stuff. I think that's also something you're going to see more and more of in hotels is as we move forward is, you know, for those of you who've traveled, for instance, I'll use United Airport as an example. So they have a ghost kitchen and then they have all these different restaurants, but you don't have to eat at the restaurant, right? You can eat anywhere you want. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that happening as well in hotels where people can order food and have it delivered anywhere. There's no reason why if you're sitting at the pool, you can't order something from one restaurant or another, that you just have to have a pool service menu. So I think that as we use this opportunity to change things, and this is definitely an opportunity to change it and integrate technology, I think we're going to see more of that where a hotel will have many different items on one menu from many different restaurants. And it doesn't matter where you are. If you want to sit on the beach and have it, you can have it on the beach. And so, you know, I think maybe we look at how do we replace buffets, but do we have to necessarily replace them? I think maybe we just offer different things and more creative things. And so that people don't notice that they're not there.
Yeah, I might jump in here too. And you're absolutely right, Barak. And those buffet counters can convert to served counters, right? So you can bring out the equipment that's necessary to make it a served counter, and then it becomes more of a labor issue. How do you pivot your labor so that some of your folks who are used to be in the back of the house are now out serving that, and you position your labor and your labor schedule so that you have more front of house staff, and then account for that in the back. So being flexible with the labor to meet that is important too.
Thank you, Sean. The next two questions are related. They come from two different attendees, and they are for Barak and anyone else who wants to interfere here. But first for Barak, you had mentioned something about insurance and testing, and the two questions are related. They come from Araceli and from Chanel. Okay, the first one is, do you think there would be an increase in travel insurance purchasing after the pandemic? And the other one, I think you had mentioned something about that. And then the other one was, will guests have to pay more for this type of luxury rapid testing results through the app? You cannot answer both at the same time, Barak.
Well, the answer to the first one is yes. I do think there'll be more travel insurance, so we'll keep that one simple. And with regards to the rapid testing, yeah. So, and you're talking about adding to the cost. Yeah, so it does add to the cost, certainly. What I think you may see, what we're seeing and what we're expecting to happen is in some cases, in most cases, I think that the traveler will pay the test. You know, they'll have to pay for it. They'd have to pay for it anyway to get home. But in other cases, you'll see hotels that are stepping in and saying, hey, you know what, well, we're a luxury property. We're pretty expensive and we'll bill it into our price. And, you know, while you're here, you get one rapid test on your way home complimentary. So it's really up to the property, I think, depending on what they do and their needs. So yeah, but I think for now anyway, where we're at, I think the convenience, it's always been about convenience. You know, I'll go back. Here's a funny thing, but we had a discussion like this a few years back to think about this with Wi-Fi. Should we be charging for Wi-Fi or should we not be charging for Wi-Fi? I think it was in 2007, so let me date myself. But we're having the same conversation now, right? People were saying, I don't mind paying for Wi-Fi in a luxury hotel. I just don't want to have to physically take my credit card out and pay for it. Just put it in the bill so that I don't know I'm paying for it, meaning incorporate it into your fee. And I think that may be happening a lot, is that, you know, it'll be included in the price and you have a test in many places, because people just, again, they don't want to waste time when they're at the property. They don't want the inconvenience. So if you're bringing a test onto property, you're making it convenient. You're making it so that they can just come downstairs at 8 o'clock, have their test on the day that they're supposed to leave, get the results in their app, and off they go.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody wants to add to that? We know that's going to increase, you know, and the price are never going to come down. That's going to be just what Barak said, like Wi-Fi used to be.
But I'll add something. You know, hotels also need to look at guests are flexible. You know, one of the things with certain things, right? So for instance, one thing we've learned during the pandemic is that you don't need to turn a room as much, right? So guests are okay with you maybe only coming in once a stay or once every 3 or 4 days instead of every day or twice a day or turn downs, right? And that all costs money. It's labor, it's amenities, it's all that kind of stuff. So there are ways to, it's the same thing with, how many times do you want your towels cleaned every day? Now, most guests allow the towels to not be cleaned every day, maybe every couple of days. And so I think that if you balance it out, you have ways of offsetting some of the costs that we have, the extra costs that are related to this.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So the next question is actually a statement from Gene Hartman, and it relates to Anne's presentation. They're having a so-called a Castle at College. It's an initiative that New Mexico State University is having. It's regarding diversity, inclusion, and so on. Maybe I ask my colleague Gene to send an email to Anne and to everybody else that probably can inspire others to have similar things. So it's not a real question, it's a statement. So Anne, I just want you to know that, and I hope that Gene can correspond and include that to everybody. The next question comes from Alan Rice, and Alan joined us a little late, so he's asking, and I'm not sure who he's directed this to, are we going to have another roaring 20s with pent up and demand for most everything of our industry, dining out, travel, increase in 2019 expenditure and vacation, etc.? Not sure who wants to touch on that. If it's the luxury segment, Steve, Anne, anyone can pinch in.
Well, as always with pent-up demand, I'm speaking now from my hotel days as a CEO and previous GM. Yes, I think the data demonstrate there's a tremendous amount of pent-up demand, and there will be opportunity. And those that know how to analyze the data and position themselves to take advantage will be doing above the rest. It's as simple as that.
I would agree. I think, every survey you see, and we track a lot of intent to travel type surveys, everyone you see shows a lot of pent up demand. And I think you even see that in some of the trends. I mentioned before holidays, give people an excuse to get out of the house that they've been locked up in, and boom, they're on the road. Just Valentine's Day. I mean, the numbers in the US for Valentine's Day weekend, occupancy got close to 60%. Weekend occupancy got close to 60%. That was the best number for 18 weeks. So that goes all the way back to, summertime. So, I think you're seeing a lot of indications of that, which makes me think, we were talking about Vail before, and I'm sorry, Chris. Yeah, Chris, you were saying ski trips are up. You have a lot of guests. You're seeing a lot of activity for this season. I wondered if you might speak to that. And also, I was really curious about summer. Do you have an indication forward bookings as far as summer is concerned? Because I might predict that this could be the best summer the Vail area has ever seen in history. Just curious what your feel is on that, if you don't mind me switching.
Yeah, sure thing. And I hope you're right. I hope you're right about summer. I would agree with some of the earlier statements that there is a lot of pent up demand, and we're going to see that. I think that mountain destinations are primed to do quite well with that, because there's natural social distancing, and there's outdoor activities and recreation and those types of things in Colorado and across the West. Last summer, we saw state parks and national park volume at historic levels. You couldn't book a campground, right? And RV sales were the highest they had been in years and years. So I do think that those types of things, and how do we capture that essence within our individual brands, be it the Colorado brand or the individual resort community brands, to leverage the demand that exists with the message people want to hear around family time and spending time with loved ones, rest and relaxation, and the natural social distancing that can take place. For our winter season, we are down a little bit, but we're much, much higher than we expected to be. To clarify your earlier comment, last summer, we saw, May and June put those out because of the restrictions that existed. When things started to open up again, we saw a big uptick in July, August, and September and October were actually better than 2019, September and October. So we saw that growth towards the end of the summer into the fall. And our summer numbers now are just starting to come onto the books. We're impacted by the events and groups and meeting business still being pretty severely impacted, but our leisure travel is showing pretty strong demand. So I expect we're going to have a very good summer.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I have a few more questions. We have about 6 minutes left. And the next question is actually at the core of this conference. And I expect all of you are going to say yes. It's our president, Priyanka, is asking all of you, please, okay, would you please be interested in collaborating with professors to publish articles that benefits academia and industry? I guess you're going to say yes, right? So yeah. I'll not wait for that. We need you because otherwise our research cannot be anything. Jean is another question. I'll make it very short. What type of research can academics perform that would be most beneficial to DMOs, destination management? What kind of funding source would be available for that research? If maybe Chris, you can give me a minute answer to Jean.
Yeah, I think the short answer of that would be research that is focused on some of those psychographic drivers. What are the psychographic drivers of travel, and how do individual destinations best target the psychographic? We have a really good grasp across the industry on our demographics and on our geographic drivers, and we know that. We've got that dialed in. Every DMO has that dialed in. Where we really need to do a better job, and I think we could use academic research assistance, is on the psychographic drivers and what does that mean and how does it become actionable from a funding standpoint. I think that probably the DMOs and the lodging tax entities and the state tourism offices would be very interested in supporting that research.
Thank you. The next question was very long from Grace, but I'm going to make it very short. And I think if Dr. Bohalis would be here, he would be very interested in dealing with this. He may not be so happy or very happy. Okay, the question is about how do you see the future of destination development addressing the so-called over-tourism? Some researchers have a problem with that term. So I don't know who wants to address that. I'll give you a minute to answer the question. Over tourism.
Well, I'm going to jump in. A long time ago, when I did my thesis at university, it was in tourism as a development eco-sustainable tool. And it was on Dominican Republic, which at the time had one cruise ship coming in and a handful of hotels. So I'm aging myself. But I think that there's, I think it's a collaboration between those that have environmentalism top and foremost, which if you listen to Bill Gates this week is a bigger issue than the pandemic, along with government and scholastic or people from universities, and make it exceptionally rich in terms of geographic participation. So various countries joining hands around this, along with, leadership in the industry. Because I personally think as a Canadian, get done with the pandemic. It's a new way of life. What we need to do to protect our environment is at the forefront of the future of life for our children. And there's a great opportunity. One of the panelists was speaking about experiential tourism, and there are many new revenue streams. And if you look at Airbnb, the whole cultural concept of interchange between people and cultures, you look at the cruise industry and all of the people that go on the onshore excursions. You talked about back of house tours. I ran one of the largest resorts in Canada. I was GM of, where Shania Twain and all the great people were discovered in Muskoka at Deerhurst Resort. And one of the biggest successes we had was doing back of house tours and explaining how our environmental approaches work towards how we work with guests and our local community in Muskoka, which is a really environmental place to be in the world. So I think that is the next big opportunity on the horizon.
Thank you very much, Anne. I have 3 questions. I'm going to ask the audience not to ask any more questions. As a respect to our colleagues, I'd like to answer those questions. And so the first one is from Kelly, and it is for Holly. And I really find the question interesting. So you explained, Holly, that the safety issue and the training they go through, that's what she's saying. I'm not repeating every word. That it's really great, but how can we, the cruise liner industry, rebuild the customer trust based on what has happened if they are so highly trained and what happened?
So again, it goes back to controlling that narrative, and the cruise lines recognized that they needed to take a more proactive step in marketing what they're doing and how they are stepping up to make sure that they are meeting the needs of not only the guests of today, but also of tomorrow. And that is something that the cruise industry, I think you will see more and more of. There for a while on some of the websites for the different cruise lines, you could actually watch a little 30-second video on cleaning standards or safety standards or what have you, what they're doing. And it makes a difference. I know here in Las Vegas, it made a difference as well. Some of the properties ran videos about what they're doing to clean and sanitize the rooms. And so it reminded me a lot of what the cruise industry is just starting to do. And you'll see more of that.
Thank you, Holly. I'm gonna just share a screen here. And I just wanna I wanna thank all the panelists for participating in this presentation and discussion. It was great. I certainly learned a lot, especially about, from Anne and where women are moving from here, and the cruise line, and also what the luxury segment and what Sean told about new technologies, but also the destination management, which is really crucial, in the marketing of that. So I'd like to thank all of you for your contribution.